Welcome back. Just in case you joined us, this is the great KBC, and this is KBC News Check. My name is Njue. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm not alone. I have Honorable Kore, who is Mandera South MP. I have Honorable Kimaiyo, Gideon, who is the MP for Keiyo South. And we have Moses Rajoro, who is a political scientist and also a governance expert. We have been tackling a lot of issues that are dogging the country and some of the things that we can do to try and alleviate the suffering. We have been touching on security, and I would like Mheshimiwa to have the final word in terms of security. Before we went for a break, we were looking at security, the fortify, the energy that we are using to maybe even send troops.
Yeah.
We have our own border that also need a lot of fortification.
Yes.
So that we may try and deal completely with this issue as well as we are helping other people.
Yeah, I think that is true. I've given you just an example of schools in my own constituency where students will have to be moved from their locality to a safer locality just because perhaps there is no capacity to protect them in their locality. And it's along the border with Somalia. And it's a number of schools. It's not just one school. There's a school in a place called El Ram, a school in a place called Abeumur, a school in a place called Nyatalio, a school in a place called, it's escaping my mind. So quite a number of schools in different localities in my area. Look at the teaching environment in Mandera County and Northeastern generally, as we speak now. The question of universal education for all is a pipe dream for millions of youths in that part of the world. Because teachers who want to teach in that region and are coming from other parts of the country are scared of insecurity, and they are asking for transfers to go back to where they have come from. Health, which is a very, very crucial sector, is almost on its knees because medics are afraid of going to work in that region because of the frequent insecurity. And it's not what my friend was calling normal cultural thing in Northwestern. This is a different type of insecurity, you know, where violent extremists who are hell-bent to make sure our institutions and our governance in that part of the world fails, have really caused us all of this havoc. So I expected the 7.2 billion for sending troops to DR Congo. Maybe assume me to be a layman. I'm not a layman. I know what I'm talking about. But even if you assume I'm a layman, that billions would have done much more to secure Kenyans in Northeastern, so that our teachers feel safe to go and work there, so that our medics feel safe to go and work there, so that our students can do exams in an environment of, you know, calmness, and so that they can compete fairly with the students from other parts of the country. And I can tell you, if you are breeding an ignorant community, because this is what is happening in Northeastern, this bulging youth population who are uneducated, who are going to be illiterate, are going to become a problem for this country 10, 20, 15 years to come. And those who think perhaps it's a small matter now, you will have a matter that you will deal with, which is going to be a problem worse than the problem which we are having in Keiyo Valley today. You see how it has become difficult to deal with what is happening in Keiyo Valley today. That is going to be even a worse problem, because a hopeless young generation which has been denied the opportunity to have that universal education, who have no hope of getting employed because they have no papers to even think of even going for an interview, and who have got enemies across the border who are enticing them to cross over. You know, it's a powder keg. It's a ticking time bomb.
Yes.
And we need to deal with these kind of problems before we start thinking of securing other people's houses. Our own house needs to be put in order.
Okay, and the last one, I remember Japheth Kome on Friday also talked about he's going to involve you guys, that is Parliament, for legislation. He wants to act tough in regards to cattle rustling, and especially in the Rift. And he talked about working with legislators to the point that we want legislation so that we make cattle rustling a terrorism crime. Can that really see the light of day in Parliament, bearing in mind that we have had issues? We've heard that there are some even politicians who are financing these people. Do you think that legislation will be seeing the light of day, and would you pass it, coming from a region where you have been dogged by security challenges for the longest time?
I welcome that move by the IG, and I think it's in the right direction.
And you support it?
I support it. But my worry, and I'm cautious about it, is the politics that will come with it. When that thing comes in, you'll see now politicians retreating back to their tribal or where the communities where they come from. Like now, I'll say I'm a Keiyo, so if this thing is going to, if my people have been the one who have been doing these things, it's going to harm my people. You know, we'll bring in the issues of human rights and the rest. So there'll be a lot of politics in it, and I am worried if it will see the light of the day.
Do you think it's going to see the light of day? And would you support it as the MP?
I think I would support it 100%. And for lack of a better word, I think there is no other way of describing cattle rustling that has dogged that part of the country for many years, rather than calling it terrorism. That is terrorism in pure definition. The only missing angle perhaps is those terrorists who are stealing cattle are not fronting a political agenda.
Yes, and I would like to hear it from a political scientist, Moses.
Let me speak about
it's a good thing that he has mentioned, he has been candid enough that he is worried about the politics that would come in regards to that.
Okay, I wanted to speak to the issue of Kenya sending troops to DRC. You know, to the average Kenyans, they may not understand why Kenya is sending troops to DRC.
And spending 7.2 billion.
Yes, because Kenya's strategic interest, in fact investment interest in DRC, that we're supposed to secure. So by sending troops to DRC, it's very strategic for the country, because there's something we need to protect in the DR Congo. And again, you know, Kenya being a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, you know, we also need to embrace the principles of the UN, because in fact, one of the reasons why the UN was formed was to protect, to prevent war, and also promote peace and stability in the world. So Kenya sending troops to DRC is not bad. In fact, in Europe, there's this organization by the name NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's a military alliance. So each European country, they make some contributions towards this body, whether you are poor or rich, because those countries are not, some are poor and some are rich. So Kenya sending troops is very, very important for the regional security and peace. Very, very important. And again, you know, the conflict in DR Congo may be very difficult to explain what causes conflict in DR Congo, because it has been there for the last 25 years, for more than 20 years now. Because, you know, the DR Congo president, Tshisekedi, he has a feeling that the war is being fueled by this militia group sponsored by his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame. But we don't have enough evidence to prove that. And again, you know, DR Congo is also rich in mineral resources. In natural resources. So DR Congo is very, very, very important to the region. And again, DR Congo joining the East African community is also very important, because in fact it brings a very huge population of 90 million with a lot of mineral resources. So DR Congo is still poor, but has got very many natural resources.
It's wealthy.
Very wealthy.
Yeah.
Very wealthy.
And something else that always touches on security the drought situation in the country, and we allowed in the government and all the stakeholders, including you, the Kenyan, who is coming out to chip in to help our brothers. At least the skies have opened up, which is going to give quite a relief for a number of Kenyans, but the situation is still dire. We had COP27, and if you have been following it keenly, there's a lot of talk, but very little action. We're not talking about how much should we compensate, because if you litter, you're supposed to pay that. Mheshimiwa, I'd like to get your sentiments on that.
On the issue of drought in the country, I wish government would do much more. Of course, the new government will say we just came in, but we know government is in perpetuity, it continues. It doesn't end. But I wish we could do long-lasting solutions. We don't want to come here again next year. We are discussing about how Kenyans can come together to contribute for those who have been affected by famine. So I wish the government can invest in long-term solutions. And I'm happy with the president that is talking about food security as one of its pillars. And one way of achieving food security is about investing in dams, investing in sources of water. It really pains me and many Kenyans that, counties, for example, Turkana, there is billions. What is the single most priority of Turkana country, for example?
Water.
It's water. Or Barinko, where it's dry. Or in Keiyo Valley, where I come from, in the valley, it's water. Or in the northeastern, it's water. Or in Okambani, it's water. So I would wish that the county governments, with the billions that they receive every year, that they said maybe can save 10% or 20% of it goes to water, because that is the single most priority of those counties. Having said that, also the government should increase more allocations in terms of solving the issue of water, because if we are going to depend on rain alone, we'll continue talking about the same famine year in, year out. I really feel sorry for the farmers in Kajiado. We saw in the news, people selling cows at 50 shillings, goats with 50 shillings. It's really painful. So this drought thing also is associated with what is ongoing about climate change, the issue of our forest cover and the rest. But as much as we have the drought here, we must not be punished by the developed nations in terms of telling us to limit our development at their expense.
Okay. And hold that thought as we repair the microphone habit. We're having some technical issues. But Mheshimiwa, you're so passionate about COP27, and I'm quite sure you have been keeping a keen eye, having so many of your constituents having to watch their camels, their animals die because of that. The head of state talked about 100 dams in the pipeline, but he wants to scale it to 1,000. Maybe it could be quite ambitious, but it is the one solution that we need. Because looking at the rains right now, there are some people who have floods now. Just a few weeks ago, we were having dry land. Now we have rivers and lakes where we had dry land.
Yes, very well said. I think, first of all, let's agree this question of drought, because of the impact of climate change, it's not going to go away. It was there yesterday, it is here today.
It can only get worse.
Tomorrow. It can only get worse. And if you look at the pattern and trend of drought in northern Kenya, it has become a cyclic phenomenon. When you are in that part of the world, you are either in the middle of a drought situation like we are today, or you are preparing to get out of one, or you are preparing to get into one. That's the cyclic nature of this. And this all has been contributed to by the climate change. So given the discussions we've seen in Egypt on COP27, there's very little hope, because the biggest polluters who are supposed to be made to pay for their action are trying to escape, through some legalese, finese, language, diplomatic language that makes the matter look like it's a very small matter. And to make matters worse, even the climate security matter was never discussed at COP27, and yet climate and security are reinforcing each other to cause more harm in the regions where we come where we come from. So the thing is, we need to as Kenyans, we need to learn how to live with this drought. We need to learn how to live with the impact of this climate change. And how do we do it? Like you have just correctly said, we see millions of liters of water just run off into the ocean. We need to catch that water. We need to store that water, and we need to use that water during lean times. And therefore, the idea of having 1,000 dams like the president promised is a good idea. And I can tell you, Northern Kenya, you guys are Christians. You know the stone that it is normally said, the stone that the builders rejected became the cornerstone. Northern Kenya is going to become the cornerstone for this country in a few years to come, because if you look at what the secessional paper 10 of 1965 was suggesting, the government investing in high potential areas, expecting that development to trickle down to lower potential areas, has never happened since independence. And therefore, the so-called high potential areas have almost reached their economic equilibrium in terms of even production, farms, and what have you. But Northern Kenya is still a virgin. A lot of food can be produced in that part of the world. A lot of beef is already coming from that part.
And a lot of renewable energy.
A lot of renewable energy. We have high-value extractives lying under the soil in Northern Kenya. We've just discovered oil in Turkana. We are told there are very huge deposits in Mandera, oil and gas in Mandera, Garissa, that Somali belt. And therefore, that region needs to be treated well now. And we need to invest more in making sure we make life easy for our people, making sure we also encourage alternative livelihoods so that we can keep cattle, but at the same time, we can also encourage service industry to take root in that part of the world. I am happy our president has said the Hustlers Fund would be up and running by December. We have millions of our youths and other women and other people who are at the lower bottom of the pyramid, and we know those people will benefit from the Hustlers Fund. We need more initiatives of that. The economic ideas the president is having in order to move Kenya from the situation we are in now to the next is a welcome idea. And I think tapping that water, especially for the drought, investing more in renewable energy sources instead of depending on fuel, which is also going to contribute more to our gas emissions. I think we will go a far way.
We have a scientist in the house, and I'm quite sure you have had some take home in regards to the COP27. As they talked there outside, and the issue of compensation was quite pronounced, and we had people with placards, and even we had demonstrations right here in the country and other parts of the country in regards to, let's just not do it for the optics, that we are going to deal with climate change. Let's even find countries that, and USA and China are the two leading countries that are contributing the biggest chunk of climate change. Here in Kenya, the head of state talked about 100 dams are in the pipeline, and he wants to scale that to 1,000. Mheshimiwa here is talking about even renewable energy, looking at the wind in the northern region, wind energy. If we have a few dams in the northern region, and then we use renewable energy, that is the solar and the wind, we can even pump enough water to irrigate the virgin lands that he's talking about. Your pick.
Let me begin with what Mheshimiwa has talked about on construction of dams. By the way, I'm a big fan of this government, and I remember I've been following the government very keenly since, in fact, I remember when Kenya Kwanza government was launching the manifesto. Was it in June 30th? Yeah. The president said that his government will not construct new dams. In fact, it is even outlined in the manifesto, the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. But now we realize a change of tone when the CS for water, that is
Alice
Wahome. Yeah, when she was being vetted, she said that the government will now construct dams. But going by what they have in the manifesto, the president was very clear that his government will not construct new dams.
Okay,
that is a waste of money.
That is debatable, but let's look at what he has said in regards to going forward.
Yes,
as
now,
opposed to the promises that were in the manifesto.
Now, what the government has done, the government, in fact, I can say there's hope, because the government has now mobilized about 25 million shillings to mitigate the effects of drought. In fact, and they're doing this through the PPP, the private public partnerships. So, in fact, out of that 25 million, 5 was from the government and the 20 was from the private public partnership. So I think there's hope. And again, to mitigate, to deal with the issue of drought, the government also needs to invest in irrigation, because that's a long-term solution. So to me, on COP27, to me, I think COP27 is just it's a place where the rich country or the West, are advancing their own interest. Because, and again, most countries in Africa, like, our leaders are not that interested in this issue of climate change, unlike the West. That's why you find that guys who are interested in this are the Western countries, the US and UK, they've invested a lot in this. So that's why in fact, with the COP27, if you have been following keenly, you will notice that the president of the US is yet to attend. He has been busy doing his own things.
He did attend.
I think it attended the last day, I think.
On Friday. Yeah.
On Friday, it was in
No, he attended on Friday.
Indonesia. Was it Indonesia?
All right.
Yeah, so to me, I think this is just a place where the rich countries, are just advancing their own interest. So in African countries are just like conveyor belts.
And the push by African countries to have compensations by the West, that is the US and the China, they're the biggest contributors of global warming. Do you think that could at least try and alleviate? Because if we have a few $1 billion because of their actions, that could be used to mitigate the effects of climate change, build more dams, and even supply food, because right now we really need that food.
Yeah, sure. I think what the government need to do in regard to COP27, I can say that building dams is very necessary. But again, we also have dams that have, what may discourage someone is the issue of the Aurora and Kimaiyo. In fact, the government spent a lot of money.
But
that dam was supposed to be constructed by
we decide because the project did fail or did run into some challenges that could be a benchmark that we would be heading anywhere, because
the
president on Sunday, I was actually listening to his speech. He did even mention the Aurora and Kimaiyo and said even those stalled ones, because of a few issues here and there, we are going to revive them. And you actually come from the region. And I'm quite sure you were in that Sunday service.
No, I was not in the Sunday service. Yeah.
But at least you did follow the president's speech on the same.
I want my colleague here to not to be so pessimistic with the COP. Indeed, the President of the United States of America attended the COP. That was on Friday. He gave his speech before leaving for the ASEAN summit, which is happening in Indonesia, with the G20 also. The issues that touches with climate change is global. And that's why the UN, in its wisdom, started the COP. Up to now, we are at COP 27. There are pronouncements which are being done there. But again, the pronouncements done there just ends as pronouncements, because the big nations now, the rich nations like the US, the Western countries, and China, who is there to police that they do what they commit? Because, and these are the issues also that affect the UN in general. Because I remember last year, or this year, when the Speaker Pelosi went to this country, what is the name of the country? Which is China claims Taiwan.
Yes.
Sure. So, in response, China told the US, we are pulling out of climate issues. You see, because of the geopolitics.
And unfortunately, it's Africa to suffer.
Yes. So, for me, what is important is mitigation and adaptation, as my colleague said. We must not just be forced to follow what is happening internationally also, but we do adaptation. For example, things that can work for us might not be working for the Western nations. So if we can adapt, for example, in my own area, we have forests and people have been doing the shamba systems there. But we were told, no, we cannot go into the forest because you are reducing forest cover and the rest. I am not saying we cut down trees, no. But let's do adaptation in such a way, for example, in my area of Kaptagat there in Keiyo Marakwet, Kaptagat, Penon, Sabor, and Timboroa, we have lived with the forest for all my lifetime. I've seen people, the artificial trees are cut down by the sawmillers, the farmers move in, they're the ones who will plant the trees, and after that they harvest the trees and the circle repeats itself. So let's adapt. Let us not just follow what the Western nations are saying, so that we increase the issue of food. Finally, on the carbon credit and climate finance, let the African nations unite in fighting for that, so that we get this money from the rich nations, because they're the ones who have caused the highest pollutants, so that we bring in the money and we invest in dams and the rest. Yeah.
And gentlemen,
it spoke about Kimaiyo and Aror. I think the politics which was at that time, and it has dominated our headlines, was the issue of politics about Kimaiyo. And me, I'm happy particularly because I come from this region. Kimaiyo is in my area. It is in HZ area where I come from. And I'm happy because the president has pronounced himself and said these dams will continue. There were small issues, and myself, I believe it was politics. And my senator at some point claimed that some people just wanted the Rift Valley people to hate our president back then when he was a vice president, when he was the deputy president, that we could not vote him in. So I also want us to, as a country, let's not mix politics again with development to the detriment of other regions. If Mandera is supposed to get a dam, let Mandera get a dam. If Kajiado is to get a dam, let them get a dam. If Nyanza is supposed to get a dam, let them get a dam, not just and say because the president was not voted in this region, or the president, because next time it will be a different region. So I welcome that Kimaiyo and Aror will continue, and it will assist the Keiyo Valley in terms of irrigation.
It's a good thing that being the MP, who have also put that that out clear that the project will continue. Let's avoid the side shows. And it's a good thing you've talked about politics, because it's a good thing that we have also to talk about politics. Mheshimiwa, looking at the exercise that is currently underway, that is the vetting of the PSs and the 51 names that were fronted. We have petitions. I have gone through 2 petitions that have been filed at the High Court in regards to how the names were arrived at. And they have raised pertinent questions. One is regional balance, people with disability, the youth, talking about 27 names coming from 2 tribes. We haven't incorporated people from ASO regions as we should, the 2/3 gender group. There have been so many questions in regards to the vetting process that is currently underway. I would like to pick your mind on this.
Yeah, thank you. I think I will be part of a committee which will be vetting some of those PSs on, I'm in the Committee of Education, and I'm sure those will come to the...
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
And as members of those different committees, we have had our, pre-vetting meetings, and I can assure you we are going to be very fair, we are going to be very objective, we are going to ask the questions, hard questions, not necessarily to pin somebody down, but to make sure the process is fair to everybody. And
we are hoping that is going to happen, because what we saw in the CS was more or less like a rubber stamp.
Yeah, so I can assure you, you will see in those committees a lot of hard questions will be asked, and a lot of, because we are all Kenyans, and those CSs are also Kenyans, and the question of regional balance and people from two different whatever. The way I think some of these appointments sometimes happen is if you look at one sector, for example, if you look at the PSs alone, without necessarily looking at other appointments in government, you may feel perhaps this is tilted towards. But if you look at it holistically, with other appointments that have been done in government, maybe it's an attempt to balance what was not balanced in other appointments.
Mheshimiwa, let's look at it this way, Mheshimiwa. Yeah? Let's look at it this way. How many people with disabilities have been appointed for the CSs or even the PSs? That's a good question.
Yeah, unfortunately, not
not as it should be.
As it should be. It's not as flattering as it should be.
Do you feel people from your region have been left out in this government?
Yeah, of course. And anyway, we are a country of 50 million Kenyans. And it's only a few who will be privileged to occupy those coveted positions. And our constitution is very clear that certain category of stakeholders must be. As a region, given the many years of marginalization and neglect, I would expect even to be given more than any other region of this country, because they have had very nice throughout those other periods. But that's not how government appointments and political processes work. And I say for the PSS as a region, looking at the whole of Kenya, I think we have gotten the fair share that we would have wished to have more.
Mheshimiwa, you are close confidant of the president, and you hail from the UDA party. Do you think that the PSs, let's look at the PSs, because the CSs is a long gone case now. Let's look at the PSs. Do you believe they truly represent the face of Kenya?
I think the president has tried.
Has tried?
Has tried, because it's not an easy thing in trying to balance.
But Mheshimiwa, some of these things are in the constitution. 2/3 gender role, marginalized areas. We're supposed to incorporate. If we are talking about one government, it shouldn't be seen like it's tilting or leaning on one side. Mheshimiwa himself has concurred. In as much as the president has tried, we would like to see more of these people. He has those powers to appoint people with disabilities. He has those powers to actualize the 2/3 gender rule, to have a regional balance, to have a face of Kenya.
So as I said, in trying to balance all those, the face of Kenya, gender, the president also is a politician, and he knows who, that's why the constitution gave him those powers to appoint. And once he gets the names from Public Service Commission, for example, for the PS, the president was forwarded maybe in every category you had allowed 3 or 5 names. And the president, in his wisdom, because he has those powers, knew this person is capable of delivering for me this and this and this. Because in the long run, the country will remember the Ruto's regime, not the PS regime. And the president knows, if I give Mheshimiwa here to work for me, he will deliver for me. And there will be other appointments. So they'll still be the CS, they'll still be at appointments, and the president will know.
Can I tell you something, Mheshimiwa? When the list for the CSs was announced, even his cronies talked about there are so many positions, kunaza PS, kunaza, now we've done away with the PSs. You're saying there are other positions coming.
It's true.
And after that, we're talking about other positions will be coming. The parastatals are there. Come on, man. We need to
The
do that
ambassadors
now.
are there, and the president, the president will try to balance.
Let's hear from Moses. Do you believe that what President did was that he gave a face of Kenya? People with disabilities, two-thirds gender rules have not been observed yet, but Mheshimiwa says that let's wait maybe a little bit later.
Okay, to me, I think the president has tried because people are very fun. People. So some of us expected Ruto to win elections and wait for people to join the government. That doesn't happen anywhere. In fact, even now the US is really divided. But when Joe Biden was appointing his cabinet, he never appointed any of them from the Republican Party, and the US is now divided, really divided. So even in mature democracies, like the UK and the US, it doesn't happen like that. When you win the elections, you form the government, and it's you who is supposed to choose who you think can deliver. So to me, I think, in fact, when you compare this government with the previous regime, President Uhuru Kenyatta's first term, I think he only had 6 women in his cabinet.
Now look at the comparisons now.
No,
this is what we are having.
It's very important.
They are being vetted.
It's very important.
We have, I think we have 3 or 4 pending petitions in court in regards to the same. So I'd like us to really narrow it down to what we are having, that is happening as we speak.
Yes, when you look at the list of the peers, there are more than 10 women, if I'm not wrong, 10 in that list. And again, to me, I think regional balance, I think he has tried.
Can I say you guys are sugarcoating it?
Not really.
The Constitution is very clear. Two-thirds gender rule. There is also the marginalized and people with disabilities. We haven't seen that. So in as much as we try to push it forward, the Constitution, the supreme law, is not being followed.
Okay. Normally it's very good to do comparison because it helps us understand what is happening. When you compare Mwai Kibaki's government, Uhuru, and now Ruto, I think the Kenya Kwanza government has really tried, because on appointment of the PS now, or the CS, Ruto has really tried. In fact, even for the CS, we have more than 7 women in that cabinet. That is somehow 33%, And for the peers, now we have 11 women in that list. That is around 25%. Not bad. So I think we have made a step, and we need to give the government credit because, and again, remember, there are various, state, departments. That is because we also have the ambassador.
We are back to the discussion that there are so many other positions, just like Mheshimiwa talked about.
There's nothing. I think there's hope. The president has really tried, and I think Kenya is moving towards achieving the 2/3 gender rule.
All right. Back to you, Mheshimiwa Kore. Looking at the way the head of state has been carrying himself, at the end of the day, he's still a politician, but we have seen something that we never saw him do when he was a deputy president. Right now, he's so calm, collected, He's not talking much. The deputy president now is talking more than the president. But the president is so calm, he's so articulate. Many people expected that maybe he might decide to turn against some people. The first thing he did when he took power, he even gave his predecessor, former President Uhuru, a job that he's doing currently and that has led to Kenya sending troops in the DRC. I would like you to give us a picture of the president now.
Yeah, I think the description you are giving is correct, and it is the natural thing to expect, because His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, the candidate or the deputy president, should naturally be different from William Samoei Ruto, the president. He is now the president. The statesman he is. He's carrying the hopes and aspirations of 50 million Kenyans over his shoulder. And he doesn't need to blame person X or person Y. The buck stops with him. And Ruto, being what he is, he's a brilliant, energetic, very visionary and focused politician. Even during his campaigns, you could see that energy and vision in his campaigns. So the president has come to very quick realization that he is the president of this republic. He has to steer this ship. He has to bring us out of this economic turmoil. He has to bring us out of this fuel and high cost of living. And he has to treat all Kenyans equal, even those who did not vote for him, even those who competed with him, because at the end of the day, he's the president of all of us. And therefore, I think the president is on the right track. He made a number of promises for the 100 days. One of the promises he has perfectly, dealt with is the question of, extrajudicial killings, which is affecting a lot of people in this country. I have a relative, for example, right now, whom we don't know whether he's alive or dead because he disappeared.
That was quite something.
It was quite something, and you only feel it if it happens to you.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of the rule of law, and working as a court reporter, I know that indeed if somebody is guilty, you need to take that person to court as opposed to that person disappearing. So that was a welcome move.
Exactly. So a number of those promises, the Hustlers Fund is on course. By December will be a
it will be a game changer.
It will be a game changer. He has appointed the judges that he said he will appoint immediately he comes to power. In fact, on the one, when he was sworn in, he appointed the judges he promised to appoint. He has promised to bring a number of legislation in the House where we do our business, the housing legislation, the savings legislation, the NHIF legislation. All of these things are on course. And I think our president is being presidential and is doing the right thing as a president of this republic.
As a personal friend, as a personal friend, how has the president carried himself for the less than 90 days that he's been in office in regards to how he's doing things and even what he's doing outside the country? Because looking at even after the election, the former head of state, President Uhuru, said that my president is someone else, but we do contend with what has just transpired. And he was the first person to be given a job, even before the CSE. And he's doing that job right now. A paradigm shift from the way we look at politics in the country, don't you think?
You asked me how I would rate the president. And I think if the president continues the way he's doing things, we'll be surprised. We'll be shocked with a number of things. So for me, I think it's excellent at the moment. And the president has started on the right path. You mentioned how he has handled these competitors and the rest. I was reading, I think, the Saturday Standard or Sunday Nation over the weekend, and they were analyzing the number of trips that the president has done, both the number of meetings that he has done, both internally and with our external partners, traveling all the way to the UK and the rest. And this shows a president who is setting the foundation. All these meetings are meant for setting the foundations for better things now to implement as we move forward. So the president also has, lived to his promises. Like my colleagues talked about the judiciary, he appointed the judges the way he promised. He talked about Hustler Fund, he's launching it on 1st of December. He talked about CRB, which affects many hustlers. We saw the governor of Central Bank pronounce himself yesterday. They will move forward in terms of ensuring that people are lifted out of CRB and are allowed to have a credit score. So the president is living to his promises and is carrying himself soberly. And as you asked, there was the deputy president Ruto now who was campaigning, and we are out of campaigns. He's a statesman at the moment, and he has to live so. So for me, I wish the president well. We are there as legislators in parliament. The legislations that he wants us to support him so that the country can move forward. For example, the issue of NHIF, so that we have universal health care, the issue of savings, so that we can use our own money in our developments instead of borrowing, and all other things that he promised, in which we see him is starting slowly by slowly to to implement.
Moses, the head of state has also done some cuttings in terms of how the government is spending. And some trips have been cancelled. We have always seen people from Mombasa, they come to Nairobi for benchmarking for weeks and days. Nairobi, they go to Naivasha or even Mombasa. Some of these trips in the ministries have been scrapped, some have been cut. One of the issues that the head of state wants in terms of how his government is spending, so that we may have some more or less like a float or something.
Yeah. I think the president has done a good job up to now. And again, you know, before he won the elections, people were like, oh, this man will change the constitution and become a dictator. And he has proved his critics wrong. So I think cutting the budget is very important, considering the high cost of living in the country. So, to me, I think, okay, the opposition have been complaining, saying that, oh, there is high cost of living, we need to do something. But it's not only in Kenya where there is high cost of living. Mm-hmm. This thing has affected the world, I mean the global world. So, I think, to me, the government has really tried to deliver some of their promises, yeah, that were made to Kenyans during their campaign. And again, the only issue I have with the Kenya Kwanza government is on the Hustler Fund, because now the terms and conditions are now they're very tough, unlike what we were told before the elections. So, and again...
But with all fairness, looking at Kenya and the levels of corruption that we have, if we decided that the 50 billion that he was going to be giving it out just as he promised in the campaigns, don't you think there could have been a lot of room for abuse?
Not really. I think I'm of the opinion that the president should just stick to his words and let Kenyans get the money, because he said that there will be no interest. Yeah? You just go borrow this money as long as you have your ID card and the ID card. That was all.
So do you think, gentlemen, do you think
things are now changing?
Do you hold the same opinion? Of course, the Hustler Fund has come under sharp scrutiny in terms of the president talked about during the campaigns. He said it's going to be interest-free, but later on said that it's going to be a single-digit interest. And then even the CES for Treasury has come out to say that indeed it's just not giving you money to go and do your shopping and eat. It's money that you're supposed to work with.
I think, that particular bit of the money being interest-free, and now it's not interest-free, is the big thing in the whole thing. Of course, there has to be a legislation to make the fund functional.
And sustainable as well.
And sustainable, that's the right thing to do. But as a Muslim also, and a Kenyan, I think the question of interest is going to lock out a lot of
many Kenyans
people, especially who profess the same faith like I do. And unless we will definitely make our contribution at the floor of the House when the legislation comes up. Definitely we will push for an inclusive kind of mechanism which will also accommodate those people who don't take loans on interest, like the Muslims.
Yes.
Otherwise, the whole idea of putting it into a legislation and making sure it is not a fund, because there is no free money.
It's actually, he used the same word. There's nothing
so for it to be sustainable and for it to benefit many more Kenyans even beyond Ruto's presidency, it has to have some kind of a legislation around it, and that's what we are going to do. But the question of interest, I concur with my friend, it has to remain interest-free if it is possible for all Kenyans. If it's not possible, for those people who are restricted by faith, like the Muslims, not to go for loans on interest, then it has to accommodate them.
I want to also hear your sentiments on the same.
I think let's be calm and patient also, because The bill has not been brought to Parliament because it will not. There's no government money will just be given out without a law. So the Treasury has come up with a draft of it.
But that will be looking out
just
some
hold on.
section of the group.
Just hold on. The Treasury has come up with some guidelines on how this thing will work. They are subjecting it, even as today as we speak, they are subjecting it to public participation. And Mwananchi, or the ASLA himself now, in various town hall meetings, which is being subjected to today, it started yesterday, it was in Eldoret, it was in Njue and all other places, will be able to give their feedback. And I'm, rational that the ASLA or the common Mwananchi will say, if you are giving me with interest again, to CRB. So let's the public participate in this thing. I think they have given 4 or 5 days, and then after that they will bring it to Parliament. And there is the Committee on Delegated Legislation, which I am part of it, and we will deliberate on the same, and we will subject it to the floor of the House, and all these things will be catered for.
All right. Away from that, let's look at the counties in more or less like 5 minutes now, because we have had some audits done, and we have unearthed billions of shillings, taxpayers' money, that was looted in terms of ghost workers in a number of counties, including Nairobi, Mombasa, Siaya, we had Kisii as well, but we haven't seen any heads roll. We are expecting that we are supposed to be seeing heads roll, because if at all there are some people who have been paid for years without having worked for that money and being ghost workers, then something should be done.
So that's a very the issue of corruption in Kenya is, to me, it's a normal thing.
No. If we say it's a normal thing,
yeah, because even in Siaya County, where I come from, my governor has really tried to show that he's really interested in fighting corruption, but these people have not been taken to court. Yeah, and I'm very sure, and I can bet that no governor is going to take this people to court, and these people may not even be jailed. So it's like the main challenge that the Kenya Kwanza government has to tackle is the issue of corruption. But our good president has been very silent on this issue. Yeah, because we have seen the DCI and the DPP dropping some corruption cases. Yeah, so and the people are like, what's happening? So the problem with Kenya is that when you are accused of corruption, your community will come and defend you. Yeah, because they will be like, why only Moses? Because he comes from Nyanza. So I think what we need to do is that we don't need to personalize this whole thing of corruption. So that's my take.
I would like to pick your mind on the same. He has said that the president has been a little bit mum in terms of matters corruption. And looking at the counties, the audit that we are seeing, there are so many agencies that are mandated in making sure that our money is not mishandled, but they have been quiet so far.
Yeah, I think we are also at a transition period. This government is only, I think, 2 months old. A lot of ideas, a lot of agendas are being worked on. Definitely, you'll realize perhaps after the first year, we will have known the clear direction on where we need to go in terms of dealing with corruption and all of these issues. It's too early for anybody to run around right now and make a lot of big headlines, because even the government, through the handovers and the takeovers, there are a lot of analysis and studies that are being done, including studies and analysis on legislation. And I believe something will be done in this country. This is not the Kenya of yesterday.
All right. Sure.
Mheshimiwa Kimaiyo, I want to give you 30 seconds. We need to wrap it up.
Okay, on the issue of counties having ghost workers, I want to appreciate the governors from those counties for being bold enough to expose them. The Siaya governor and the Garissa governor, among others, because that is where it starts. So now that we have the exposure, I would love to see EACC move in with speed and investigate and send the same investigation report to DBP, and we see DBP heading to court and let those who abuse the public money prosecuted in court. And as my colleague here tries to say the Kenya Kwanza administration through the president is not pronouncing itself in terms of against corruption, I think that's a lie. The president has already said he is not going to be the one making phone calls to say so and so to be arrested. The president believes in the institutions that have been mandated in fighting corruption, like the EACC, the DPP, and the rest. And he's giving them money so that they and he has
time to work.
He has demonstrated by giving the police their own money so that they can work on their own operations. Right. So let the institutions move in with speed and do what they're supposed to do.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for even making time, and thank you for your insight. I have been hosting three gentlemen. Moses Rajoro, who is a political scientist and governance expert, also graced by two honorable MPs, Gideon Kimaiyo of Keiyo South and Abdul Kore of the Mandera South. Thank you so much indeed for watching. My name is Njue. Susan Thuku has been our sign language interpreter for this live newscast. We're now giving the baton to the Swahili desk. Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini coming up next. Thank you again, gentlemen, for making time.
Thank you very much.
And of course, remember, World Cup Eco KBC. I'm so excited. 5 days. Just 5 days to go, and we are looking at a number of players and also the stadium. And talking of stadium, let's look at the Education City Stadium that will be playing host to some of the matches in this year's World Cup in Qatar. Remember, World Cup Eco KBC. Gentlemen, whether you're football fans, you're supporting?
I've always been Brazil.
I am supporting Germany.
Germany?
Yeah.
Moses?
Germany.
Germany. Oh, indeed. Me, timu za Africa, I will own them. Tunacheza na, yeah, it's more or less like Kenya is playing. But let's listen to some of the things that have been mooted in regards to one of the stadiums that will be handling the World Cup. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a blessed afternoon. Gentlemen, I cannot say it.